Hello, this is John. Welcome to the Blue Water Outlook Ag Weather Outlook for BWO001, recorded on March 9th, 2014. Well, let's start off today's briefing by looking at the number of rain days across key ag areas and sort of looking for trends here. And really the only trend I think is worth noting is this enhanced area of green from Iowa across the Wisconsin-Illinois border. It's pretty narrow, so I'm not sure if this is going to be a huge impact one way or the other on agriculture, but there were about 5 days of precipitation, very heavy snow in that area. You can see this on the past 7 days of precipitation. The liquid amount is in green, and that's about an inch, and you bring that over to snow, and you can tell that's a lot of snow in this band that's right in here. Very heavy snow in that band. Also some heavy precipitation down here in Kentucky, but the northern section here, the eastern part of the U.S. Corn Belt, just light amount of precipitation. Percent of normal here, if you sort of step back and just look at this, you're going to see a lot more red than blue, and that's saying from a general perspective across the Corn Belt, below normal precipitation over the last 7 days. This is a very localized effect. It was heavy snow, but you can see it was very localized. Now, as I often do, I look back over a 90-day period to sort of look at trends, because if you're just looking at that 7-day period, that's give you some insight, but it's really not going to give you the full insight unless you look at the longer period. And I think this departure from normal will show us our surpluses, our deficits of rain. And circled here in red, the eastern U.S. Corn Belt, and that's green and some blue. Now, if it was excessive, it'd be more blue. And right now, it looks like it's mainly green. And I think that's fine. Areas of blue where we're getting 4 inches or more, then I'm going to get more worried about wet soils. But right now it looks like it's modestly above normal, so I think we're okay. I'll be looking at that more this week, however. Now, if we look at Missouri, that area in yellow, that's not really a key growing area at all in the Ozarks, but I do think it extends a little bit more further north. But one of the things I wanted to say, this was an area that I wanted to get a little bit more rain. And if you look at it, that area of yellow now in northern Missouri and Iowa has really shrunk, so that's good. We're seeing some of these pockets of lighter green, and that's saying a little bit of a surplus of rain. So good news here is looking at the entire region. I don't see any widespread areas of yellow, and I don't see any widespread areas of blue. So as far as these extremes, one way or the other, there's some imbalances, but right now they're not excessive. Now this tells the story of the winter. I ran a timeline here of temperature for Green Bay. The brown is the normal range of high and low temperatures, and the plot there, the blue line at the bottom, is indicating the record lows. And you can see throughout the winter, this goes from November. Look at how much it was down to this area of blue, this below normal, and occasionally dipping down here close to record. So it wasn't necessarily a lot of record set, but it was just a persistently cold winter. And if we look at snowfall as we started, you can see as we went through from early December, these surpluses of precipitation have persisted. So we have a significantly cold and persistently cold and extensive amount of snow over the eastern part of Minnesota, Wisconsin, into Michigan. So here's a 7-day snowfall. A lot of snow in a lot of places. Almost the entire Corn Belt was covered by snow. But you do see this band right here of green, and that was that really heavy snow. And I can zero in on it here. You can see the areas of northern Illinois, 8-9 inches of snow. I see a couple spots in southern Wisconsin of 10 inches, so very heavy. But further north, it dropped off very quickly. So here's the snow on the ground. Now, snow's going to be interesting this week. I'll talk about that just a minute. Now, these are remnants of past bands, but if you see the eastern U.S. Corn Belt right now, there's not any significant snow. Missouri, not a whole lot of significant. Really, the area here in darker blue is the only area right now from at least a snow standpoint. I think there could be some problems, especially in this area of the brighter shades here. That's a higher snow water equivalent, and that's where it looks like it's anywhere from maybe 4 to 6 inches or even 8 inches of liquid equivalent. So when that melts, those grounds can be very, very wet. it looks like the biggest impact as far as key ag areas would be southern Wisconsin here, parts of Michigan, parts of Minnesota, but a lot of this is over areas just north of the agricultural growing area. So from a river standpoint, it might have impact, but from a ground moisture, it probably wouldn't. So last 7 days, very cold, even more widespread cold than we've seen. And you might ask, why is this persistent? Well, I think I've mentioned this in the past, but here's your sea surface temperature anomaly, and this is a warm anomaly. It's been there for a good part of the year. This is from average from December 1st, so you can see this long-term average. That jet stream tends to work around the northern edge of these warm pockets, then it dips down in response, and that's why we've had that jet stream dipping to the south and bringing our cold weather. And if you want to see the impact, well, this is the same time period, 90 days. This is an anomaly of pressure at the jet stream level, and this is a lower than normal pressure and higher. Purple's lower, red's higher. So in other words, if I would draw the jet stream, higher pressure showing that jet stream goes up to the north, lower it's going right here, and that's been the cold air. So this lower than normal pressure has dominated over the corn and soybean areas throughout the last 90 days. That's why we've had such a cold winter. So here's a jet stream analysis this week. There's going to be some very significant warming over at least the west and central corn belt. It's also going to be spreading over parts of the eastern U.S. ag region. But by the end of the week, we are going to get a reinforcing some cold air. But I do think we're starting to edge into spring here, and it's going to come in bits and spurts, and we're going to still have a vulnerability towards colder weather over the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley. But I think the western and central part of the U.S. corn and soybean areas are going to begin to see that modest push of warmer air. Early this week, it'll be more significant. Now here's the next 7 days precipitation. Nothing all that significant with the exception of southern Indiana and southern Ohio, about an inch or so. We need to keep an eye on that because I don't want this to get too wet in this area right here. This is one area that it has been wet recently, so that'd be one concern. Upper Midwest, no additional significant snow in that region. And here's the snow forecast. Nothing all that significant. The blue's not that significant, but this area here, that'd be more significant. That's late in the period. Okay, now this is what's sort of interesting to me and perhaps unusual. Look at the potential snowmelt forecast over the next 7 days. And if you look at the left image here, you see that bright pink. That's as much as 10 inches or 20 inches of snow on the ground, so a heavy snow cover. And look by the weekend, that gray is only an inch or two. So it looks like there could be a very significant snow melt over this region over the next 7 days. And why is that significant? Well, there are a couple reasons. I put that study out recently that showed that the longer the snow lasts on the ground, might not be good from a flood risk, but it might help a little bit as far as keeping soil moisture up. But this snowpack hasn't really been over those areas. It's been generally to the north, with the exception of North Dakota and just a few parts of the Great Lakes. So it'll be interesting to watch. I'll cover that next week. I'll let you know how it turns out, but that could be really interesting. Okay, so let's go around and take a look at temperatures and precipitation, see if we see anything interesting. This is this week, and like I said, these browns are a push of warm air, so we're going to have a really strong push of warm air early this week. Dakotas, down through Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, into Wisconsin, Illinois, lagging a bit further east, but still moderating temperature. But that's what's going to warm up the snowpack and produce all that melting. Now, if we get into the, let me go back here. Okay, here we go, 19th through 24th. You might look at this and say, well, we still have that cold air over the middle of the nation. Well, to some degree we do, but if you look at the scale here, it's a lot less intense. We're down to like anywhere from -1 to maybe -4. And remember, it wasn't that long ago, that was -15. So even though the second week, we still see that persistent cold pocket up here, it's not nearly as intense as we've seen. And actually, a large part of the U.S. Corn Belt is beginning to moderate with normal temperatures. Then we get into precipitation. I can go through here pretty quick. Even though there will be some precipitation this week, it looks like it should be pretty much below normal, and likewise the second week. So Basically, any areas that have been getting too much moisture, maybe soggy, are going to be drying out, and I think we're going to settle in heading into the middle of March in fairly decent condition for spring, as far as not too much soil moisture and not enough. So I think we're okay. Now, you could look at certain points and say, okay, yes, they're a little bit too high. In other parts, we could use a little bit more, and those areas are out there. But I think from a general statement, we're in decent shape with not huge excesses one way or the other. So the takeaway, significant warming early this week. That's going to melt a lot of snow. Then it looks like cooler, but not nearly the extreme cold that we've seen. I see some modest amounts of rain or snow, and then it looks like spring is trying to work its way in. I think it's going to make it into the western part of the area, but it looks like it'll be lagging a bit in the east. I'm going to be looking at some of those accumulated rainfall graphics and putting those out throughout the week, looking a bit at some long-term outlooks as far as the models. I want to hit those this week as well. So stay tuned. I hope you have a nice week.